If you had the choice to move to Australia, would you want to get here as soon as possible or take a bit longer? Would you want to opt for a temporary visa where perhaps your employer would pay for your visa or something else as well, like flights? Or would you rather stick it out for something a little bit more secure and wait for your permanent residency to come through? Well, for many people looking to move to Australia, especially our guests today, Georgia and Tom, that was exactly the conundrum. How desperate are you to start your new life living in Australia? Which visa route is the best one for you? And will you end up regretting your mistake? I guess we're going to find out. G'day, Georgia and Tom. How are you?
Thanks, how are you?
Yes, really good, really good. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
We are in South Brisbane.
Because when I've looked at your Instagram and stuff, it looks like you've done more visiting of Australia than I have, and I'm jealous. I'm always jealous of people that have been here for less time and done more visiting of Australia than me.
We've done quite a bit, haven't we?
Yeah, we like to travel, don't we, to have a look at different stuff.
Especially this last year. We have had sort of a year of a honeymoon, we've called it. So we've used it to travel to different parts of Australia that we wanted to see.
Wonderful. Do it while you're young and you don't have two little time sponges that are just going to eat up all of your time and make travel a lot more difficult. Sam and I were very much the same beforehand, but now it's a little bit trickier. Can you tell us more about yourselves, more about your life before you moved to Australia? What were you kind of leaving behind? What made you want to come here?
So we owned a house. We had a dog, lots of family within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of my family lives in like a small village back in Lancashire, so if you needed help or if you wanted to go see someone, it was get in the car and drive for 10 minutes, and that was kind of, you were there then.
Yeah.
Were they at like the other end of the village or?
Pretty much,
yeah. We were quite, I think we'd get into a point where we were quite stable. And then before we bought the house, just before we bought the house, we came on holiday here, stayed with my auntie on the Gold Coast and fell in love with Australia. Kind of decided that we probably couldn't live here, probably couldn't move. Didn't think it would really be feasible. Then my cousin moved here in October 2020. My sister already lives here in Melbourne. So we've got quite a lot of... Yeah, I don't like Melbourne either. She will hate me for saying that.
We did go there to visit when we first got here.
Nice city, but too cold for me.
Yeah, the climate's not for us. We came for
heat.
But yeah, especially you northerners, you're used to more cold than us southern fairies.
Yeah.
We don't like the cold.
We don't like the cold. Dips below 20 degrees in my life.
Yeah, my thing is if it starts with a 1, that's too cold for me.
Way too cold.
So was weather the main tipping point then that wanted to make you move over here? Because it sounds like your life was a little bit cushy. What was it that made you want to decide Australia isn't for us, but now it perhaps could be?
Weather was a big factor. We wanted an outdoor lifestyle, which in the UK we really didn't have. But here we are outside quite a lot more, aren't we?
Yeah.
Go out exploring at weekends.
More opportunities, I suppose, in terms of work-life balance. Like, I would get up, go to work in the dark, be at work all day, get home in the dark, and then you just don't see anything. Whereas over here, my work-life balance is a lot more better for me in terms of I get home and I've still got quite a bit of...
4.
Yeah, I finish at 4, so I've got quite a bit of time when I get home.
What is it that you do, Tom?
So I'm a motor mechanic.
Any cars? Or...
Yeah, just cars, but specifically Mercedes-Benz.
So do you work at like a Mercedes-Benz garage? Okay, and is that how you kind of got here then? What was your migration journey like then?
Yeah, so we originally, once we decided we wanted to come over here, it was right, we'll go down like a permanent residency route and we'll go for like a 190 visa. And then we started going through all the paperwork and all the process and document gathering for that, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And it started to become like, this is going to take a long time to do. So out of curiosity, we started looking for jobs. And I applied for a few at a time, and I got an interview with one of the employers. And after passing the first interview, phone call, video call that I had with them, they put me in touch with a visa agent who specifically deals with motor mechanics.
Okay.
As I progressed in conversation with the visa agent about that, and he started to understand what we wanted, because we didn't really want to come over here as temporary residents and gain permanent residency. We kind of wanted more permanent residency straight away. And that ended up scaring away the potential employer. So they kind of,
How would that scare them away, do you think?
They didn't want to do
They
PR.
didn't want to do permanent residency straight away or within so many years. They wanted to basically get the full 4 years out of me before
Yeah.
doing the permanent residency.
I find that a lot from people who I speak to with regards to temporary visas. And I don't want to paint it like this picture, but it seems like because you're essentially tied to the employer because of that visa. Like, if they don't want to employ you anymore or you don't want to work for them, then, hey, guess what? You've got to leave the country. They like it. I don't want to use the word slavery because you're getting paid for it, but it's like you're ours and there's nothing you can kind of do about it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear that an employer, when, assume that they were, right, Matt, assume that they were a really good employer, provided a good workplace, you wanted to work there. In theory, whether you've got a permanent residency or a temporary visa, it doesn't matter necessarily on your visa status. Of course, you're going to want to stay with them.
Yeah.
Or apparently not. That's what they're scared of.
Yeah.
So it was more of because the government and stuff have been changing the sponsored visas for the last couple of years, they probably assumed that there's going to be more changes made, which have happened, but it's not really impacted us right now. Because they pulled out of the conversations, I stayed in touch with that migration agent, and he then reached out to other businesses within Brisbane and Gold Coast to see if they would be interested. And I ended up being connected with a Mercedes-Benz dealership, and I had the interviews and stuff with them, and they agreed to sponsor us to come out here.
Okay.
And obviously, there's different, depending who you're sponsored by, depends on what kind of package offer that you can be given. So they paid for my visa and we paid for George's visa because it was like a de facto partner on the visa.
Yeah. Was it just the visa that they paid for, or did they offer anything else?
It was just a visa that they paid for. I have seen other people be offered more like relocation, flights, put in temporary housing for 3 months and stuff like that. But I think it really varies on what trade or what occupation you do.
Yeah, and how much in demand it is, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't think motor mechanics is one of those where they do treat you that kind of way down that sponsored route. It's more of a come over, start work as quick as you can kind of situation.
What do you do, Georgia?
I'm a property manager.
Okay. Not necessarily in demand, I don't think. So how has it been finding work for you?
I got a job really easily. I wasn't a property manager in the UK. I just started new here. I was a conveyancer in the UK and then wanted to change jobs completely. I actually did find a job pretty easily. I started doing an online course in real estate, got a salesperson certificate, and just applied for a couple of jobs, and I think I got my job within a week or two. So it wasn't bad at all actually when we arrived.
I think one of the biggest challenges for lots of people is, when you have the main visa applicant, it's obviously quite easy what kind of jobs they're going to go and end up doing. For me, I'm a teacher, so, I'm going to go and end up being a teacher, I guess. Part-time weirdo that makes videos. But it's difficult for what is your partner going to kind of do? Especially, in a situation where sometimes a lot of people just go, oh, well, I'll look after the kids while they're young. I'll enjoy this time. But if you've not got any other responsibilities, what are you going to do? Sit there in your apartment twiddling your thumbs all day long? You've got to find some work. And for some families, some couples, that can be a big challenge. If you don't find work and you're stuck at home, and that's one of the key ways that you can make friends, right? Just meet some people at work, go out for drinks or whatever. But if you're stuck at home with nothing to do, so it's great to hear that you've been able to find it so easy. What prompted you wanting to change out of conveyancing?
I was pretty miserable, to be honest.
That'd do it.
It was very stressful.
Quite soul destroying at times, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was very, very stressed constantly in the UK. Every day at work, I just hated it. So then,
was it the job then, or was it the people you were working for? What was it? A bit of everything?
I did 3 different companies, and it was the job. It was conveyancing in general after COVID, I think, got so much worse. So then, I decided to have a complete career change, and I'm very glad I did.
So it sounds like a very different life in the UK, not necessarily the happy lifestyle that you wanted. What was then your first impression when I know you'd been here before, but what was your first impression living in Australia as opposed to visiting?
What do you reckon?
To be fair, it was one of those, stepping off the plane, when you're going on holiday, you feel the heat hit you, and then you kind of be like, oh, wait a minute, I live here now, kind of moments for me. But
I think
you were different, weren't you?
Yeah, first impression, I loved it. I've always loved the country anyway. And we kind of had a holiday when we first arrived, so I was in holiday mode for a while. Loved it still, but I think I struggled more than Tom did in
Why
terms
is
of
that?
I found it hard to feel at home straight away because being so far away from family, I found it harder than I expected to.
What did you find the most difficult? What about leaving the family behind?
I think I constantly have in my head if anything goes wrong back home, I'm 24-hour flight away, a really expensive flight.
Yeah, not cheap if you want it, now.
Quite expensive.
Is there anything then that you, in particular, that you're worried about? Because I know that for some people with perhaps older parents, older grandparents, that type of thing, that's things that are going to happen perhaps with their health. Was there anything in particular that was weighing on your mind that
Health
was the bad thing?
health issues is a thing. I think for family, if anything, any health issues with family members, I know I'd want to be there. In case to spend time with them. If anything was going wrong, I'd want to be there. So obviously, I'm not really very close to them anymore.
No. Sam has the same kind of feelings, and she often feels quite torn, especially because her uncle has already passed away since we've been here, and that was during COVID. So there wasn't even the opportunity really to kind of fly back. Like many people, we just had to sit there at a weird time of the morning watching it on the live stream kind of thing. So yeah, I can understand firsthand really. And I've lost my auntie. That was even earlier when we kind of first got here. We just kind of got the call. I guess it's a bit different with someone passing versus someone falling ill. If someone passes, it's like, well, what am I going to do really if I go back? There's nothing I can do. I can just really attend a funeral. But at the time we didn't even have that choice. So if that has been something that's played on your mind, what's helped you to overcome it? Because you're still here, right?
Yeah. Lifestyle here. Love the lifestyle here. We love that we can be outdoors most of the time, that the weather actually allows you to go out. If we have kids in future, I would love for our kids to have this life.
Is there anything in particular that's kind of, you're talking about your outdoor lifestyle, the new better work-life balance that you've got. Is there anything in particular that kind of makes you really feel either at home or really like you fit into this new lifestyle?
I think it's been a gradual adjustment here.
Okay.
The more that we've now starting to get more friends and I feel like I have more of a support network. We also have family here. I have an auntie. I've got 3 cousins down here. I have another cousin in Townsville and obviously my sister as well in Melbourne. So I think that's also now helped me that I do have that support network.
Just connecting with a different part of the family then, I guess, really.
Yeah,
it does make things easier having people that already over here, I'd say, because obviously that's George's family, not my immediate family or anything. So I've had to get to know a few of them. Like a couple of them have been in the UK before, but it's been very brief conversations with them. So it's actually for me developing relationships with them to begin with. But
which has been good.
Yeah.
I guess as well, that's something that sometimes people don't really think about. There's the family aspect that you're leaving, but then there's also the kind of the new family that you're gaining a little bit. Sometimes those distant relatives that you never really thought about end up being, the ones that I suppose it's a bit, you kind of think, oh, well, I have to get to know them because there's no one else. Try and take the positive out of it. I'm missing the ones that I have to leave, but, I would have never got this opportunity had I never lived here, really.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm really close with all the family that are here. So it's been really good to be around them and get to know them more. One of my cousins did live in the UK for 5 years. So we were pretty close anyway. And then as the family have been over to the UK a couple of times previously, we were pretty close. Already moving out here, so it's been really nice to live closer to them and develop that relationship more.
Aside from then the family aspect, which seems like it's doing well, how have you gone about the social aspect with new friends and things? Because you've moved over here and having family contacts. Did you have any friends, or how's that gone?
We found that hard, didn't we?
Yeah, it still kind of is. There's a small group of friends that we do have, but mainly they're British.
Yeah.
So it's so strange because you come over here and any like people from work, most are Australian, you try to get to know them and like they become a good colleague and stuff, but like it's different between our works because your work you're very good friends with them as well.
Yeah, I've made really good friends at work.
Whereas at my work people tend to be more colleagues. But I think it's more of the environment as well because I don't sit and talk to them all the time and stuff. But you try
If you're on
and
a temporary visa, the boss is getting you working.
Yeah.
No talking and slacking off. Send you back.
You could.
Yeah, they could.
I guess you're right though, because at first I kind of got lulled into this false sense of security that, you know, having kids, it was easy for me to meet other people, other families, other parents, and I kind of thought to myself, you know, it's the kids that's the gateway. So thinking about other people that don't necessarily have kids, like what is it for them? And I think actually it's not the kids specifically, it's the having things in common. You know, we're all older than we were when we were kids at school, and what was the commonality then? Well, we're all in the same school and we all hate school. So yeah, I can say that because I'm a teacher. They all hate it. But you know, that it's that common hatred for things. That's why you end up, you know, finding friends and making friends for life.
Yeah.
But when we get older, it's kind of like, well, what is it that's the thing that we have in common? And you don't really know. I mean, most young people would probably say it's drinking. You know, we're just going to go out drinking and we like drinking
and
together.
we don't drink.
Because we don't drink, we struggle to find that connection with people.
Yeah, so then I guess the next best option is kind of hobbies. You know, kind of going out to do things. But you're right when it kind of, you say we've met friends with other British people, which some people will look at that and say, oh, no, you got a new life in Australia. You got to meet Australian people. You got to become more Australian. It's like, well, it's not for want of trying, but if I've got other like-minded British people here, then they're also going through the same moving process as me.
You've got the commonality.
Yeah.
We've also had a few people from the UK actually move over here to Brisbane. So there's a couple of people from his old village when he was a kid. They now live here. And I've got friends moving over next month from my village that I grew up in. So.
Now, is that just something that they've always wanted to do, or is it because they've seen things that you've done and then they've thought, oh, what a great idea, let's do that too?
I think it's something they've always considered. So my friend's moving next month. Her partner has a sister here. So he's been here quite a lot. So I think that's what triggered them to move. And then your friends, you lived here before, didn't you?
Yeah, one of them moved over with her parents when she was younger and then hit, I don't know, 19, 20 and moved back to the UK to be back there and connected with people. And then her and her partner then moved out here a year ago. Yeah.
I've got a friend, very close friend. We went to school. I was, an usher at his wedding. He was an usher at my wedding. And I got a message from him about just over a year ago now. And he said, what do I have to do to move to Australia? Because he's a teacher as well. And it was me posting incessantly on things like Instagram. And his wife was like, I'm fed up. I don't like it anymore. I want to go and move like that. So I think sometimes it's a thing, isn't it? People, they see these things, they get inspired. And I guess that's the whole point, isn't it? The world that we live in now, it's a small world. We only get one shot at it. If that's something that you want to go and try out,
you got to
go try it. Yeah, absolutely. But have there been any moments with you guys that have made you question your move?
Definitely me.
Tell us about that.
Not so much you. When we went back to the UK last year to get married, we came back. It was end of November, December when we came back. Had our first Aussie Christmas, and it wasn't the same. It's definitely not the same as a UK Christmas.
No, it's hot.
Yeah.
And I suppose for people that have got really strong family connections, that was the biggest bit for Sam when she first moved over here.
Yeah.
You know, hang on, we're not going to my dad's house for Christmas. We're not having people around. We're not connecting with people. It's just us.
Yeah. I do think the time of year made it worse for me.
Mm-hmm.
But then coming back, it took me 6 months to get over homesickness. I really struggled for quite a long time, and we actually did consider getting to the end of our visa, going on a working holiday visa, buying a converted van and just doing a lap of Australia before going home.
Really?
Yeah,
that was most of while we were over here of situation.
Seriously considered that.
But it's because we went back. We came in February and then flew back in November. So You know, we'd only been here for like 7 months at that point.
I guess though, if you're getting married and you've got those plans already that you'd rather get married in the UK and not in a strange country where you don't really know so many people, that makes sense. Like, it's not like you hear some people that I think the least amount of time that I've heard someone has given it is less than, I want to say it's either 3 weeks or 3 months. I definitely remember 3. Yeah, not directly. It was through someone else that has also moved over here, and they said that someone gave it 3 weeks, and that was it. Not even.
That's not long.
We have
a
some
holiday,
people
is it?
like
Really?
that.
Yeah, we've now decided that we want to see out to citizenship at least, and then see how we feel.
You've always got the option of whether you can always go back to the UK at that point, and if you don't like it there anymore, you can still come back and it not really be a visa issue situation anymore. Like, you just fly back on your Australian passport.
You're entitled to,
in.
yeah. Well, if you're looking to move to Australia, or you've just started thinking about moving to Australia and you don't know where to start, then the first step is to find out if you even qualify for a visa. Contrary to what most people believe, Australia isn't just one of those countries that lets anyone live here. And when we made the move more than 3.5 years ago, it was one of the hardest things we've ever done. To help you out and to plan exactly what you need to do next, speak to the sponsors of our podcast, True Blue Migration Services. And when you mention us, let them do the hard work for you in overcoming the ever-changing Australian visa system. And you get to use their free visa assessment so they can tell you exactly what you need to do to live your best life down under. They are the only MARA-registered visa agency that we trust. And if you don't believe us, you can bore yourself by looking at the hundreds of positive Google reviews, but I wouldn't really recommend it unless you need help falling asleep. If we didn't use a visa agent, we'd still be stuck navigating the minefield of all the different forms and processes, and I probably would have never made the move over here and ended up being one of those people that applied for a visa to Australia and had it rejected. So speak to them today and you could be one step closer to living your best life. I don't think we ever really got to the end of the visa question then. So if you're going to wait out until citizenship, what visa are you currently on?
So currently on a 482, which is the business and sponsored visa. That was a 2-year visa because in the discussions that we had with the migration agent, it was we want to come over, but we also want to have permanent residency sooner rather than later. For things like when it does come to having children and having like childcare subsidy and stuff like that. Like, because it's a big help over here when it comes to
I
stuff
just like
that.
Georgia's smile when you're talking about children. She's like,
so right now, just before starting, we was finalising trying to get my skills assessment for the 186, which is a business sponsored permanent residency visa.
Because our visa expires in December.
Yeah, our visa expires in 6 weeks. 5 weeks? 6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks.
wow. And have you got everything? Have you put in for that already, or?
We couldn't because we needed documents from the UK to do the skills assessment, and his old employers refused to provide it. So we really struggled for a long time, and eventually submit the skills assessment in August. I think 1st of August we submitted it, and they said it would be up to 120 days. Which takes us to end of November, and we have 2 weeks leeway.
And there's no guarantee within those 120 days either.
So we ended up managing to get them to expedite it 2 days ago.
Yeah, I basically sent them a copy of the visa expiring, and they've managed to expedite it. So now they've assigned it to someone who's going to assess it, etc. Because as soon as we've got the skills assessment back, we can then lodge for the visa,
and we'll just go straight on
the bridging visa once our 482 expires.
When you say they have been able to expedite it, is that something that your current employer has obviously had to chase up for you, or is that your visa agent?
No, that's something I've done.
Okay.
As a more cost-effective measure to help keep the visa costs down, I've done the skills assessment myself, because as long as you're relatively tech savvy, you can do it all yourself.
Especially with the new one.
Yeah, especially with so the skills assessment is different compared to like being offshore to onshore, and the one that I've had to do is relatively easy. Like, it's upload, pay, tax, employment contracts and proof of employment, and then fill out some templates, and that's kind of it.
And is that because you're onshore and you've obviously got an Australian employer? Because I think that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes when you're doing it offshore, skills assessments, they're very much trying to bring whatever evidence you've got up to an Australian standard.
Mm.
But because you're here, well, all of your evidence is to an Australian standard
Yeah.
because you work here.
Yeah, and I think there's also you can now do it directly with Trades Recognition Australia, which when we first started looking at skills assessments back in 2021, you couldn't do that, I don't think.
Okay.
So we've done it directly with them this time, and it was so much cheaper and quicker and easier.
Quicker to a degree.
Yeah.
I don't think any part of the process really is very quick.
No.
No. Very bureaucratic, not the quickest in the world.
Definitely not.
Now, you talked about keeping costs down. Brisbane is becoming a very expensive place to live. How do you find the kind of financial realities of living in Australia? Because I wouldn't say you're necessarily fresh off the boat. You are newer to Australia than I am. And I think one of the things that I'm losing touch with the most is just how much things cost. So I'm always interested with this question. How do you find the cost of things in the middle of Brisbane versus your sleepy village in Lancashire?
I think rent here, the rent we pay here for a 1-bed is more than all of our house bills were combined in a 3-bed house.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think your 3-bed house, although British houses by standard are a lot smaller, they're probably a touch bigger than a 1-bed apartment.
Just a bit. Yeah.
What else do you find crazy expensive or weirdly cheap then?
I find
there is anything
utility
cheap.
bills pretty cheap.
Okay.
Yeah, compared to the UK, like as we were selling up our house and leaving, our utility bills are quite a lot.
I think they shot up to £400 a month.
Yeah, and that was just
Stupid.
That's all that was, weren't it?
Yeah.
That was just having heating on. Compared to like, I don't know, $250 over 3 months. I know obviously it's an apartment and not a big house, but it's still fully ducted AC. So it's still, if you have the air conditioning on, it's doing all of the apartment, not just one room. So it's kind of similar, but kind of not.
Yeah, you do need aircon in the bloody summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this apartment has just the sun constantly. So you come in here sometimes and it's 30 degrees.
Yeah. I speak to so many people, particularly when they're first starting to rent and, they don't get to choose which bits have air conditioning. And very often, I mean, our first house, we were lucky. There was 2 air conditioners. There was one in the downstairs that basically did all of the open plan living, and then one in our bedroom. And I had to go out and buy like a portable air conditioner just for Aurora's room because, 30 degrees. We went in there one day and it was that side of the house that was north facing. Bit weird again because we're used to south facing, but that was the north facing one. And it was just roasting in there. And I'm trying to put her to bed one day and I was like, I can't. It's too hot in here. Yeah. I think we just had to kind of leave all the doors open, leave all the windows open, and I was straight up to Bunnings the next day just to buy one. I didn't know how to use it. I was like, how does this work? How am I going to put it into the window? I didn't get it. And we still got it, ironically, and it still works. One of our rooms here doesn't have air conditioning, so it's just a kind of temporary solution. But I've seen them now that actually, because ours is a big box unit, I've seen them now that actually sit in the window.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, there are some of them now.
For any people who, I mean, they're not necessarily the most efficient as the proper built-in ones, but for anyone that moves over here and is concerned about a temporary house, that what am I going to do? I need some air conditioning. It's not air conditioning everywhere. For the sake of a few $100 versus no air conditioning, they're not a bad thing.
Yeah, they're not actually too expensive, really. They're not too bad.
Is there anything that you found weirdly cheap over here, or is it all too expensive?
I wouldn't say everything's too expensive.
No.
Fuel is cheaper. It's surprised how much it fluctuates. It fluctuates 50 cents between one day to the next.
Yeah, I swear it's like at the end of the week they charge more.
Yeah.
Yeah. On public holidays they charge more.
Long weekends, everyone's trying to fill up their utes for dragging campers. They need the fuel. Otherwise you're not going to go anywhere, mate. Sorry, it's another 50 cents. We never got wild swings like that at all.
No.
I don't think in the UK.
No.
There was one point.
I think you might have already lived here then.
But
when
you
fuel
probably
went
already
really
lived
expensive.
over here. Yeah. It was when they started to notice like a shortage in lorry drivers for delivering fuel. Fuel prices all of a sudden went from being like £1.60 a litre to like £2.20, like just like that. And then
Wow.
fuel stations were running out of fuel because everyone was
Constantly.
panic buying, and but over here it feels like it goes up like 6 times a day. It's strange.
I think after the COVID thing as well, I think people really showed their true colours with regards to panic buying of things. It doesn't
Yes.
take a lot for people to go, quick, we've got to get out and just buy everything. Why? Nothing really ever happens. I think they did Australians aren't much better. They did these things called snap lockdowns while we were here. You know, one person coughed a little bit too much, or they might have a COVID detection somewhere, and then all of a sudden, you know, half of southeast Queensland would just go into lockdown for the weekend, just so it didn't spread.
Yeah.
And it was always Woolies and Coles. You know, you could see social media videos of people queued up like round the shop just to pay at the tills. I was used to go to an IGA if we were like, you know, a bit low on bread and milk and eggs, and they're always the things that kind of go. And I'd pop into an IGA and I'd look around and there'd be no one in there. And I'd say to the person on the till, I'm like, we are going into a snap lockdown this weekend. They're like, yep, no one's here though. Get what you want. I'm like, it's just Coles and Woolies. They're just buying half the shop. Ridiculous. What's been your biggest surprise living here?
Biggest surprise. I think one big surprise was how drastic the scenery changes with not even a big distance between. Like even just like the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast, you've got the amazing beaches, and then you can go an hour back and you've got the hinterland is so different but incredible.
Especially in the Gold Coast, it just turns into jungle.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then the difference between being on the edges, coastal areas, to going into the centre.
Because you've done a bit of travelling as well. Tell us about that.
Yes, we very recently did Uluru, Alice Springs. In March this year did Perth, and we sort of did we did a few road trips. We love road trips.
Yeah.
So we did some day trips, and we did 3 hours north, and we're in a desert, in the Pinnacles Desert, and then 4 hours east
Inland
was Wave Rock, and it was so remote you didn't really see anyone for ages. So everything is just so different no matter where you go. Every state is different.
How did you find the big rock in the middle? Because I've heard that, you know, Alice Springs is a little bit of a no-go area at the moment.
It wasn't as bad as I thought. Uluru, incredible, amazing. Loved every second of being there.
Yeah.
Alice Springs, as long as you don't go out at night, I think you're pretty safe.
That's what we were advised.
I was going to say, it's not exactly what you want to hear, is it?
No. We spoke to them in the hotel and they said, we asked if it was safe to go to the town centre. And they said, oh, do you mean now? I said, yeah, all right, yeah, you can go now. Don't go at night.
Yeah. When they say night as well, does that mean literally as soon as it turns dark, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mainly like you weekend nights as well. Your Friday night, your Saturday
Yeah,
night.
they're worse.
They're like peak
Rioting.
trouble. Yeah.
Rioting.
Yeah, I've seen videos of like rioting on YouTube.
So what did you do? Just have to stay in the hotel?
Well, when we was in Alice Springs, yeah. But between Uluru and Alice Springs, it's like a 4.5 hour drive. So they are quite far away from each other. And when we were in Uluru, we felt like completely safe walking around, driving around, just going, doing whatever we wanted.
Yeah, walking around at night's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alice, I think we just went out during the day. Explored some of the McDonald ranges in Alice, near Alice, and it was beautiful. But yeah, I wouldn't go out at night.
I think that's the bit that's kind of, I'd love to do more, and obviously to visit Uluru is kind of an iconic Australian experience, really.
Yeah.
But it's with 2 young girls, it's just not really on my priority list at the moment, especially when you hear all these, you see all these stories about curfews and things like that. And yeah, you're absolutely right. When you say rioting, it's not necessarily a bad description of how bad it can be.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not like a riot zone all of the time. But yeah, I just hope that they can sort things out.
Sort it out, yeah. I hope so, 'cause it's a shame because it's amazing.
If that's the type of thing that's going to put people off as well, it's something that's going to take a lot of money out of the town, really. You know, they do rely a lot on tourism. There's not a lot there, really.
No, there's not.
You can always just fly straight into Uluru and not do Alice Springs.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, we flew straight in and we drove to Alice Springs and then drove back.
Drove there with,
we did 2 nights.
Already. Yeah. We've already booked it. We paid for it. We might as well stay. There was one question I wanted to ask, and I'm going to have to kind of double back a little bit. And I'm always interested in this one, particularly because sometimes people think that moving here is going to be a detriment to their career and their goals. And when I think sometimes people are very much on the work-life balance kind of train, a bit like you are, but some people are actually no, I enjoy my work, I enjoy what I do. How have you found the career progression options and things for you? I mean, it's, I guess, different for you, Georgia, because you've completely changed career. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily expect to start at the same level, but for you, Tom, how has that worked as well?
It's still quite similar to the UK. Weirdly, because I work for a specific brand, it's all agency model. So basically, they say what happens from Germany and everywhere around the world follows the same program. So,
Because did you work for Mercedes beforehand, or?
yeah, so I did
Okay.
my apprenticeship with Mercedes, and then I was there for like an extra year after that, and then I moved to Jaguar Land Rover just before moving over here to get a different brand experience. But things like training, like on the job training, stuff like that, is kind of a sign yourself up, you go do it, and like work covers it because it's already taken out of the business funding and stuff like that. But in terms of progression, I'd say it's pretty similar to the UK, where like, so for me being on the tools, it's kind of like it's quite rare to come off the tools and work your way up in management in the first place.
Okay.
And what I've found is, so like the people at where I work, they've been there for like 15, 20 years. Like they've been there forever and they're already happy and comfortable in what position they're in. And unless they leave, there's never really going to be that opportunity within the same place. But I mean, you could always move around to somewhere else, and work your way up that way. But I'm pretty happy where I am at the minute.
I find lots of people are kind of happy because the pay and remuneration is that much better. There isn't necessarily scope to leave, and also I think having things like long service leave here,
Yeah.
that's the reason why people want to stay. It's like, why would I want to leave? I've already got, in my case, I've got 4 years backed up. If I go somewhere else,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to restart from zero. Sometimes you have to think, is the juice really worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
Yeah, the pay does vary.
We probably earn the same as we did in the UK.
I earn potentially like a little bit less than what I earned in the UK, but it's not enough to make an impact in daily living and savings and stuff like that. But it's mainly because of being sponsored. That's why I'm kind of capped at what I get paid.
So that's an interesting thing then. So if you're paid essentially the same as what you did in the UK, and lots of people say, cost of living in Australia is so much more. How do you find it then day to day with regards to, well, if you're paid the same but it costs more to live in Australia, surely you should be struggling more? Or?
We can't really work out why we're not struggling, can we?
Honestly, we can't actually do the maths to work out how, because it's
I
like,
can't figure it out either.
As we said, we pay more just alone in rent than we did in our entire house bills. Maybe it's because we also had stuff financed in the UK, whereas we've kind of snapped out of that habit when we moved over here and started fresh.
Yep.
It's like, so we sold the house and we used part of the money to buy a car outright and stuff like that. So it immediately got rid of those kind of payments.
Yeah, I find moving here just gets rid of all of bad habits. You think it's that reset button, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, I'm starting a new life. How am I going to do things different?
Yeah.
Even my approach to saving was different. I never had really any significant savings. And then when we were set to pay for visas and stuff, that chewed all that through. And then within 4 years here, I feel like I've saved more than I ever did in the first, 10 years of living as an adult, really.
I think we have here.
We feel that way too, yeah.
Financially, we probably do struggle a little bit, but only because we save money.
Yeah. It's not really. I'm struggling, but there's a pot of money that I can dip into whenever I want, or I can just save it for a rainy day, and it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any parts of the process moving over here, your new life, that you regret?
Not necessarily regret, but potentially not coming on a sponsored visa.
I mean, not coming on PR.
Yeah, coming over on a sponsored visa and not coming on PR.
Okay.
Because just of having like that freedom, essentially.
And we wouldn't have had the stress of this visa process again.
Yeah, we wouldn't be panicking right now trying to pump through another visa and more costs all over again to try and like stay here, essentially.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people get swayed by that speed, the instantaneous kind of nature of temporary visas. You know,
Yeah.
1 minute you're doing Zoom interviews, and the next thing you know, you're kind of getting offered a visa, and it's like, oh shit, let's go. And I guess, yeah, it's interesting hearing that perspective, because that's essentially what you're trading, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speed and potentially like a really cheap process, but that's as far as it ever really goes. If you want to go further and have permanent residency, you're still gonna have to pay for it.
I wish we'd waited. Sometimes the money it's cost us to do the visa again now, and it's been so stressful in the last month or so, particularly. I would have rather waited and not had the extra money, the extra stress, waited in the UK a bit longer.
Yeah, like, because while I was having the conversations with the migration agent who sorted out the sponsorship, he was saying it's quite rare for a mechanic to be able to get a 190 to come over here. And we was like, okay, so that means we could potentially be waiting years for it to come through. And that's like, you've then put your life on pause. So,
if you're looking to start a new life and set up somewhere else, we didn't want to wait years and years to do that.
And then the sponsored visa was like, they normally get granted pretty quickly. So in our case, it got granted within 3 months.
10 weeks we got it.
Yeah, so it was granted much quicker than what a permanent residency visa would be granted in, and it allowed us to come over here and kind of start life quicker. But obviously, then you've got the restrictions of you can only work for that certain employer, and if you do leave, you have to find work in the same field within so many days, etc.
What restriction do you find like the most daunting or pain in the backside?
Probably just say if I ever did get fed up where I was working and I did want to potentially move elsewhere, I kind of can't.
You've got to find another sponsor.
You have to find somewhere else that is willing to sponsor you, and then you've got to pay those sponsorship fees all over again, because there's only so much that the business has to pay for, and then they can put all the other costs on you. So like, say if they did that, we would have to then pay out, and it's like, great, we've now got to pay all over again and again and again and again.
Yeah. And I guess even though, you know, most people do enjoy their employer, you know, even if they're a bad employer, sometimes it takes a bit of a while to kind of realize it. 2 years can seem quite a long, but it's also quite a short amount of time. But is it knowing in the back of your head, I don't have that choice? Like, I'm stuck.
It's knowing that you just don't have the freedom to do what you could want to do. And like, another one would be, say, for example, I don't know, I hope they don't watch this. Say if I wanted to go into say if I went into the manager's office and asked for a pay review, it feels awkward doing that because you're being sponsored by them and you're so restricted with what you can do. And they can be like, well, sorry, we're not going to give you more pay. You can go find work elsewhere. And then it's like, oh,
you can
I've just lost my job.
Yeah, I think I don't like using the word, you know, you're a slave to the business, but you don't have a lot of choices.
No.
You know, you got to be very accepting of the deal that you've been offered and, you know, be willing to take that deal.
Yeah, I'd say most people get lucky with where you get sponsored and stuff, because it's like I said earlier, I enjoy where I work. It's just in the back of your mind not having the freedom. That's kind of it. But as a de facto partner, she has total freedom, as she can do whatever she wants to do. It's like,
you've got to do it, because otherwise you're both going home.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to ask this question, because obviously the amount of stress that you've gone through, even on the temporary visa and then having to go through and get your permanent residency. But is there anything that would make you consider moving back? Are there any like hard boundaries? If this happens, doesn't matter if we're permanent residents, you know, you were aiming for that citizenship, but it doesn't matter. If this happens, we're going back. Is there anything like that?
I don't think so.
I can't.
Right now, we're happy here and we want to stay. And I don't have anything in my head that would make me, that's it, I'm going. Maybe that'll change if we had kids or something. Maybe I'd miss the kids not being around the grandparents or something. I don't know. But until that happens, I wouldn't know how I'd feel about it.
Yeah.
Potentially buying a house could be one. It's because obviously with the costs of the cost of housing in the last 2 years has boomed massively. So like when it comes to us trying to find somewhere to buy, we could be severely priced out of everywhere that we actually like.
And all the money we've just saved has just gone on the visa again. So we could start all over again.
Yeah. What are then the plans for the future for Tom and Georgia? I mean, are you going to be living in South Bank forever?
There's a dream. I want to build a house. That is the dream. I'd love to. North Lakes is my favourite place in Brisbane.
Little Britain. I mean, we
Yeah.
joke
Yes.
about Perth, rightly so, but being its own kind of Little Britain. But I guess if you were to name a suburb in, especially the north side, where is it full of probably more British people than actual Australian people? What
Definitely
attracts
North
you to
Lakes.
North Lakes?
I just feel at home in North Lakes. I don't know what it is. We used to go to a bit of Britain a lot, nearly every weekend,
The chippy.
Yeah.
all the time,
Yeah.
because we like getting our British snacks and drinks and stuff, and I just sort of feel at home in North Lakes.
So I've got two questions. Well, the first one, what is the go-to British snack that you can't live without then?
It's crisps for me. I really miss them.
Chili heat wave Doritos.
It's even the fact that you still call them crisps. Sam calls them crisps. She calls them crisps. They're sweets. They're not lollies. And I'm changed now. They're chips. The kids call them chips. They'll interchange actually. And they've also learned the one thing I won't change is you have to say yogurt, not yogurt.
Yeah, it's not yogurt.
Yeah, no, won't ever. That and data. I love
You say that one, don't you?
Data.
Yeah.
No, it's not data. But yeah, they have chips are chips, hot chips. No, I guess
I don't like the
Doritos.
distinction between. You have to make the distinction between crisps and hot chips. I'd rather just say crisp.
I don't know. I think they don't. It doesn't feel the same. The crisps. I'm happy to say that crisps are a UK thing. And the stuff that you get here, it might look like a crisp, but it's not quite the same.
It's not the same. It's definitely not. That's my go-to snack that I miss, definitely.
Okay. Have you looked at the prices of houses in North Lakes?
Yes.
Is it somewhere that could be affordable for you?
Not for a long time. Maybe in the distant future.
Yeah.
We're looking at, if we move out of here, we're probably going to rent up there somewhere.
Okay.
And yeah, get a feel for it more, I think.
In what ways has moving to Australia changed you as a person?
I think I probably put myself out there a bit more now. I think I've probably grown in confidence a little bit.
Why do you think that?
Because you have to put yourself out there here.
Yeah.
You have to.
The social aspect of it, you have to, because you're essentially starting life again in terms of trying to make create a network and support group and stuff like that. You have to put yourself out there to build friendships, build relationships, and develop those connections. I'd say that. And
I do think that's helped me to grow in confidence. And I'm not majorly stressed anymore. So that probably helps me as well.
Yeah, I can imagine being stressed all the time is very life limiting.
Yes, yeah, it can be. So yeah, it's been nice to change career, be not stressed, completely different mindset. So I think it's definitely changed me for the better.
What about you, Tom?
I'd definitely be saying the same as I'm a lot more, would the word be extrovert? I'm a bit more
not quite as introverted as you.
Not as quite introverted. I don't sit inside all the time and play on consoles and play games and watch TV and films. Like, we try and go out that bit more, and I'm trying to be more confident in talking to people and stuff like that as well, because I do struggle at times being social.
I think it helps as well sometimes with Australian people just being a lot more friendly. I don't know what it's like living in Lancashire. I'm always told that northern people are a lot more friendly than us southern fairies down south who are always angry at each other. But walking down the street, people will actively not look in your direction just to not have to say anything to you. Whereas here, this always saying hello.
Yeah, everyone does here. It's just that's not a thing in Lancashire either. People don't really say hello to you unless you're walking the dog around the res or something. Everyone will say hello to you as you're passing with the dog.
What happened to the dog, by the way?
She lives with my mum.
Okay.
So she wouldn't have coped, one, with the flight, I don't think. She's very, very needy. I worked at home in the UK, so she was with me constantly. And here I don't, and she'd be on her own 10 hours a day. And she doesn't really cope well with heat either.
What dog was she?
She's a staffy. But we were going to bring her originally. That was the plan. We were budgeting to bring her out here. But we weren't supposed to be getting a dog in the first place. It kind of we were planning on fostering because I worked from home. We were going to foster dogs and just keep them until they found a good home for them. It was for Dogs Trust. And then I got contacted to look after this little dog for Christmas and New Year. And it turned into, can you keep her?
Yeah, yeah.
And we
Well, it's
love
good
her.
though that at least the dog's kind of still in the family. It's the same as our dog. She lives with Sam's parents and our cat. So Sam's been back there to visit, and she's at least you still have that connection. It's not like you've given them
Yes.
up and you'll never know. Like, that's
Yeah,
another
never know.
Yeah.
loop that isn't going to be closed in your mind. Perhaps that's one of the things that you kind of would sit there and regret.
Yeah.
Other than not moving the dog over, but it sounds like you've escaped a financial black hole there. Are there any mistakes that you have made since moving here that you think might be able to help someone avoid if they were moving over here too?
I'd say not shopping around for stuff as much as we did when
Yeah.
we first got here. We kind of was like, right, we need such and such, so we need a sofa, bed, TV stands. Let's just
And we
go
need
right
it
here.
now. We'll just do
Like,
it.
we just need it now. And appliances, we were just like, right, quick Google, there's an appliance store 10 minutes away, we'll go there. Like, and we didn't really compare as much as what I would have normally done.
Wish I'd done Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, Facebook
I do as
Marketplace is
well.
an option. Even just going to like second-hand appliance stores where like it's just like defect, like what would be a factory defect, even though it's not broken, it just might have like a dent in it, and it still works, but you save quite a bit of money if you added it all up together. And probably similar time of year that we came over here, because we came over not really when it was like any sales and stuff like that, so we were paying like what would feel like full price for everything. When say if you came in June when it's end of financial
That's
year.
a word I've never heard in my life.
No.
And EOFI, everything's like super cheap. It's heaps cheaper.
Yeah, come over in June.
Yeah, if I could time it, I'd come over in June, because you can buy everything that you need and you'll save so much money doing it that way.
Well, that is a great piece of advice. That's the first time actually anyone's ever given advice exactly like that. The best time to move over here financially is June, because you just take advantage of all the sales. Other than that, is there any specific advice that you have for people that are looking to make the move over here as well?
Maybe just like with the visas, don't just go for the quicker option because it's easier at the time. Maybe just wait and be patient. We didn't have very much patience. Maybe that could help you in the long run. I think it's the visa situation is that I would definitely have waited if I could have done.
I think people also, they think of that, they take the temporary visa option because they're not sure if a life in Australia is for them. And I get it, they're still not fully sold on the idea. Let's do a temporary visa, 2 years, whatever, and we'll see if we like it. But I think you're right. Like, people do just completely overlook the fact that you're not actually getting the permanency for any cheaper.
Yeah.
You're still going to have to pay for a permanent residency visa. You're still going to have to go through it. You might get a better, easier skills assessment because you're now here, but and I guess if 2 years later, the cost of things, they're not going to get any cheaper either, are they?
No.
That's a great.
This year, things have increased in price with visas and stuff like that, so they'll probably only keep going up and up and up for a bit. But
it seems to increase the price every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess if you're one of these people as well that kind of thinks about, renting's just a money pit, you're never really kind of going to get that money back. That's more money that you've kind of thrown away, if you like, because particularly people that have had a house before, just put that equity straight in and see what it is you can afford. You might not necessarily get like for like, you might get better, but you're going to get something at least, and it's a step on the property ladder is better than no step on it.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to that if you're temporary and permanent and stuff as well.
So even if we had the money to buy a house right now, I wouldn't want to because of the extra cost.
Yeah. You don't, again, it's talking about choices. It's one of those choices you don't really have.
Yeah.
Thanks, Georgia and Tom, for sharing your new life down under with us, and I hope it's given you all a greater insight in what it's like to move to Australia on a temporary visa and then be in that process of trying to find permanent residency. If you want to see more of what our life is like in Australia, then check us out on YouTube at That Johnston Life. Or if you need that little bit of extra help and you want to contact us, message us on Instagram, which is also at That Johnston Life. Now, if like Georgia and Tom, you're also having problems with processing your visa or what it is that you need to do next, then you need to speak to the sponsor of our podcast, True Blue Migration Services. Now, over the last 4 years of running this channel, I know that we've been able to help hundreds, if not thousands of people in their first steps in moving to Australia. And if that sounds like you and you don't know where to start, then you need to speak to them today, and when you mention us, use their free visa assessment. Upload your CV or resume and they'll be able to tell you straight away exactly what visa options are open for you. And when you try their service, we'll be able to do one better, and because you've mentioned us, you'll also be able to save $200 $100 off the cost of your visa. Now, whilst that might not be enough to be able to dissuade you from taking that temporary visa and recouping some of those full costs of a permanent residency, at least it might go towards something that tastes nice, and when you drink enough of it, it might help you to forget. And if you don't believe me, follow the hundreds of positive reviews on Google, and then once you've got your visa, contact us on Instagram and tell us how happy you are. Speak to them today on their website, www.truebluemigration.com. Find them on Instagram at True Blue Migration Services, or if you want me to do everything for you, then just message me on Instagram and I'll give you a link. Don't be a lazy bugger. See you next time.